What is your go-to creepy, unexplained story? This can be anything from a paranormal encounter, glitch in the Matrix, or even aliens. Part 2. Please like and subscribe to support this channel. Growing up, I liked to experiment with my Barbie dolls. I vaguely knew what sex was, and I liked to make them act out scenarios where they got naked and kissed a lot. One time I put my Barbies away after acting out a scenario. Later that day I got on my bed to read a book and I felt something hard under my pillow. I pulled the pillow off and found Ken and Barbie in the missionary position. I was so freaked out I couldn't sleep in my bed that night. I slept on the couch. I've never told anyone this story because it's kind of dumb honestly, but I was terrified to find my Barbies there. I know I put them away. And they were so perfectly in that position, arms pulled up around each other, Ken on top of Barbie, hiding under my pillow. My sophomore year of college, I lived on campus but my boyfriend didn't. He worked on campus and would often hang out in my dorm with me between class and work. My bed was lofted with my desk underneath it, and sometimes I would take a nap while he sat at my desk doing homework. One afternoon I woke up from a pretty vivid dream and started telling my boyfriend about it. I remember hearing him respond, and in the middle of my response I felt this shift in the atmosphere. It was like the whole room suddenly became slightly darker and colder. I quietly said his name but he didn't respond. He had been at work for about 3 hours. I grabbed my backpack and did homework in the library until he was off work. Honestly, one of the scariest moments of my life. High school me is alone because my parents are out of state for something. I had been sleeping on my mom's bed while they were gone because it's just so comfy. So it's a couple minutes before my alarm would have went off. I then hear the bedroom door burst open. We kept doors closed BC of our dog. And I can't even move my head to see it. I'm just stuck, frozen. My sheets get ripped off me and thrown over my face. At this point I can barely breathe. The next thing I know, it felt like I woke up. My sheet was on the floor, and I could breathe again. One thing didn't make sense though. The door was still open. As I turn to look and see that, I hear loud footsteps running through the hall. I immediately spring up to go see it, and there was nothing there. My dog was still sleeping, like nothing happened. I decide that I'd rather be at school than in that house. Yeah. What does that tell you? As I'm walking to the bus stop in a light drizzle of rain, lightning legitimately strikes the sidewalk on the other side of the street. I didn't even know what to do at that point, so I just tried to ignore everything that day. I was a kid at the time. Around 10. In the neighborhood, there was a very small house stuck between two others, with a minuscule outside garden, a single window on the first floor, and with a single inhabitant. A man who, to put it mildly, would give Jack Nicholson's character in As Good as It Gets a run for his money and jackass. And then the man died alone in his sleep. He was found 2 weeks later when the local shop noticed his absence. To explain that he wasn't loved would be an understatement. His sons and only family, both influent and wealthy engineers, one is a high-ranking official in the government electricity company, the other the city engineer of an entire district, brawled over his coffin for his meager inheritance, sealed the house's door with chains and a lock, and left to get lawyers to help them secure the better deal. One day, while I was playing tag with the other kids, we were running past the house when one of us stopped. "Hey guy, there's light inside the abandoned house. Stop talking bull, nobody." He's right. We were clearly seeing it. A small, flickering light, like a candle's, coming from inside. We had a string of thieving in the neighborhood at the time and everyone was on edge. So we called our parents believing it might well be the actual hideout of said thieves. Soon, after noticing that we weren't joking, one of the adults came back with tools and started cutting the locks. As soon as the lock got cut, the light stopped. The adults came in, looked around, found nothing. Beside a really strong smell of decomposition they attributed to how the dude died. They sent us on our way, thinking it was a visual trick caused by the red curtains put on said window. But the light didn't stop and came back multiple times. The brothers were called. The electricity engie showed up first and, influenced by his craft, thought there might be an electrical dysfunction. Nothing. They combed the area looking for a tunnel. Nothing. The entrance to the roof was sealed from the outside, and the iron bars put on the windows were not bothered at all. With his research being unsuccessful and the outside entrance definitely confirmed as the sole entrance, he chalked it to the curtains like other adults, took them off, and left with them. Then the second brother showed up, cried foul and thievery for the silk curtains, and in response, sealed the front door with concrete. making entrance impossible. Yet the light stayed, always starting at around 18 to cease at around 21. It stopped about a month later, when both brothers agreed they were acting like twats and made peace. Little brother may have predicted 9/11. BACKGROUNDA number of people in my family, mostly but not all female, have talked about their experiences in seeing omens or dreaming things like a dead uncle's last phone call to them when they didn't know he died. We grew up with this being normal and were told to listen to these kinds of things if they happen. I was a kid and blew it off. Story time: he was in elementary school and I was in middle school. I walked by his room to get to mine and heard him crying. I would usually tease him because I'm a horrible sibling, but something about his sobbing seemed really off. He used to sleepwalk a lot, so I thought maybe he was having an episode. I called out for him and he came to the door just crying. I asked him if he had a bad dream and he just nodded and cried. I went and sat with him and told him to tell me about it. So he starts babbling about a big crash and how people were going to die. Now we had been in a flash flood that almost stopped us from getting out of town because of how high the water was. His father had been in a car accident while he was driving by himself, but it totaled the car and put him in the hospital for the day. It was reasonable these things may have come back to his sleeping mind and upset him. I told him as much and said that everyone was fine and his dad was already in the accident a while ago. He vehemently told me that I didn't understand. It's not a car, it's a plane. I countered with no one we know flies anywhere, so he didn't need to worry. Then he just got mad. He told me that the plane was going to crash and so many people were going to die and I didn't even care. After assuring him that I do care and trying to get details out of him, he said he couldn't see anything more than smoke and fire and all those poor people. He started crying again, saying how he just knew he couldn't stop it because he didn't know anything to help stop it. And he could see these people dying in their bodies. He described them and it was just too much for him. I told him again it was just a really bad dream and he should try to sleep. I will never forget the way he looked at me. Like he was so much older than me. He glared and to the best of my memory said, "You just don't understand. We're going to war. And so many people are going to die." After that, he shut down. Completely. I tried to reason with him why we most likely wouldn't have war in our future and he just stared at me blankly. He stopped listening and told me he was going back to bed. He literally never mentioned it again. I tried for weeks to talk him about it and he acted like it didn't happen. After the attacks about a year later, I asked if that's what he saw and he said no, he'd never seen a plane crash before. As adults he still denies that that night ever happened. I can't imagine what he saw in that dream considering what actually happened. I'm not sure if his mind blocked it out or what. I was catching a train one day and I found a DVD on a seat. I checked to see if anyone owned it, but the train car was empty, so I stuffed it in my bag. That night I watched the short film that was on the DVD. In the film, the protagonist found a DVD on train and later on in the film, he met the star on the DVD that he had found. Fast forward to a few nights later and I was at a restaurant and saw the actor who played the protagonist. Not quite believing what was happening, I walked up to him, introduced myself and told him I found the DVD of the movie he starred in, on the train. Initially he said something like, "Oh cool." Then as it sunk in his face went pale, his mouth gaped and we both had to have a drink to recover from our minds being blowed up. Let me tell you about the time a witch gave me money at a casino. I was playing jacks or better away from my friends because I had lost all my money playing blackjack, only $40, in college at the time. I am betting a quarter at a time, so it's just me over by these machines. Eventually, an old woman comes and sits down right next to me without saying a word. She proceeds to play for a minute, and then wins the jackpot. I believe it was like $2,000. There was a ton of noise coming from the machine and people were beginning to notice. She turns to me and this is how our conversation went. "Lady, are you a Christian?" Me. "What?" "Lady, are you a Christian?" Me. "I guess so." Lady. "Well, I am a Wiccan. Do you know what that is?" Me. "Like witchcraft?" Lady. "Yes, exactly. My stars were aligned tonight, the moon and planets are aligned tonight, which is why I won. I see the same alignment in your stars and moons and planets. Here is $20. May it help you tonight." She then was taken away by the security to come claim her prize. I walked up to my friend and told him the story. He goes, "Oh, we have to bet with this money now." And so we walked over to the craps table, put it all on red, and won. I bought everyone Taco Bell with the winnings. This happened to me about 10 to 15 years ago, in my early 20s or late teens. I don't think I've ever really, honestly considered what I saw. I've told the story to a handful of people, and each time they've all had the same response: aliens. Honestly, I don't have a better explanation. I just don't know. My best friend, his younger brother, and myself were headed towards their home, late one autumn night. We were coming in from the downtown area in an old Civil War town, located smack dab between DC and Richmond. Most people's houses in that town are accessed by one highway that runs the length of the entire county, but my friend's house was way out in the boondocks. Now, you could go way down that highway and eventually make it there just fine, but there was a much faster route using the back roads. Of course, we took the back roads. We weren't strangers to those country roads. The brothers I was with had ridden on them their whole lives, and I'd been around long enough to have grown comfortable with them as well. Truth be told though, they were creepy and dangerous at night. People drove way too fast out there. Lots of accidents. As we wound through the heavily wooded, serpentine streets, we came to a four-way stop. Straight ahead of us was a dirt road. Yep, that's the way we're heading. It was one of the only dirt roads in the whole town, as far as I know. Now, like I said, we knew this area, and driving down that dirt road was nothing new. We did it all the time. It's strange though. See, the road leading up to it is paved, then it suddenly just becomes dirt and rocks for about a mile or so, then back to normal, state-maintained road again. Not sure how it ended up like that. In any case, we went right on down that road. Up until then, it was a totally average night for us. The rocks and sticks we're driving over have the car shaking like mad, and the trees are so thick overhead that you can't see a star in the sky. We're just chatting away, laughing, listening to music in my friend's ancient Thunderbird. Looked like this one. We round another sharp turn, and the car hits one last huge bump before the mud gives way to asphalt again. My friend begins to bring the car up to speed, and the looming forest thins, revealing a star-studded sky and rolling cow pastures on either side. Holy fuck. Stop the car, man. His brother yelled from the backseat. It scared the living shit out of us, because he'd been quiet for a little while. My friend asks what his problem is, and his brother starts gesturing out of his small window in the backseat. There's something over the dam. We couldn't see anything out of the windshield just then, but his brother is freaking out, pulling his seatbelt off and telling us to stop the car. My friend hits the brakes, and his brother bends me in half as he folds the seat forward to get out from the back seat. His brother scrambles out as the car rolls to a stop, and runs up in front of the car a few paces. What the fuck is that? My friend and I jump out, and run up to where his brother is standing, and, holy shit. What the fuck is that? About a mile up the road we were heading down was a rather large dam, about 150 feet in height, and twice that across. We used to sled down the hills that led to the top, so I'd been up there many times. You couldn't see it from where we were because of the topography and another forest beginning a couple hundred yards ahead. Still, we knew exactly where the dam was located from the spot we were standing ****, and something massive was hovering just above it. I'll do my best to describe the whatever it was. It's a sight that I still can't believe I actually saw. I can't really give an accurate estimate on its size, but I'll say it seemed to be pretty goddamned huge. Easily twice the size of the dam wall itself, and I feel I'm being extremely conservative on that estimate. It seemed to be ovoid in shape, something akin to a football with too much air pumped in, and bulbous at the top and bottom. The most striking and blatant feature, however, was the lights adorning this thing. They were bright, neon fucking green. A few shades darker than the uranium cylinders you see on The Simpsons, but glowing just like that. One massive bulb sat at the bottom of the thing, which I imagine seemed even brighter to me as it would have been reflecting off the surface of the reservoir that it hovered above. From our vantage point, I believe it couldn't have been more than 100 feet above the surface of the water. Very low to the ground. Running up and down the sides of the thing in lines, imagine the latitude and longitude lines on a globe, were rivulets of the same green light, though these were not nearly as bright as the one at the bottom. And so, we just stood there for a minute, slack-jawed I'm sure. I remember after the initial shock passed, the first thing I felt was an intense wave of dread. It was just too fucking close. People see shit like this way up in the sky, so far away that the camera zoom wobbles like a top when they try to film it. I just felt that I was in genuine danger. It quickly overpowered the sense of awe that had first hit me. That dam probably wasn't even a mile from where we were standing, and what's more, my friend's house was literally across the street from it, at the top of the hill. I can't rightly say much about the thoughts I had, or what I may have said in those moments. I just recall feeling overwhelmed, and more afraid than I've ever been of something like that. It's hard to explain. Different fears all have their own subtleties and emotions when you experience them, ya know? Like being caught in a riptide doesn't feel quite the same as being told you have to bury your dog. It was completely unique, and extremely visceral. The next thing I knew, my friend's brother had pushed me in the backseat, and we were flying down the road towards that dam. "Keep an eye on it," he said to his brother. "I can still see it now, but as soon as we hit those trees, I won't be able to see it anymore." I finally piped up, "Guys, fuck this. Let's go to my house, I don't want to go near that thing." They weren't hearing that though, and I don't blame them in hindsight. You don't get to see shit like that, ever. But I was well and truly fucking terrified. His brother was right, we lost direct sight of it moments after passing into that forest. But the light it was pumping out was so brilliant, mixing with the fog rolling of the reservoir, that we knew it was still there. In 10 seconds or so, we would be out of those woods, and at the top of the massive hill that led down to the dam. Still, just before that, the road took a pretty large dip, and a very sharp turn that had to be taken at 10 miles per hour, or you'd wreck. We came out of that turn, and were climbing the last ridge before the damn hill. That thunderbird was screeching when we sped out of those trees. The brothers were laughing with excitement. It felt like a battle cry. But of course, that fucking thing was gone. And I was relieved. From the top of that hill, you could see the whole reservoir, and anything else in a 3-mile radius not blocked off by trees. He hit the brakes, and they hopped out with me shortly behind. We all craned our necks, looking to the horizon, to the sky, for any sign of that thing. But it was just gone. I'll say that we didn't hear any sound from it when we saw it about a mile or so off, and we didn't hear it leave as we approached it. Though, the car really was loud, and it's completely possible that we just couldn't hear it over the engine. And the size of it was mind-boggling. More because of how close we were to it. Because it wasn't the size of a skyscraper or anything. Still, I know had I been at the top of the hill when I'd seen it that it would have dwarfed the dam in comparison. This has gotten way longer than I intended, but I wanted to give a thorough account of the events. Hope I didn't leave anything crucial out. What do you guys think? Was it aliens? Something else? Who knows? What's funny is that I'm not sure that we ever talked about this again outside of the week immediately after it happened. I've never even thought about that. I'll answer any questions you may have if I can. I worked in a bar, very old building, countless ghostly events. Ghost hunters actually investigated the building and informed me that there were at least 2 ghosts present during the investigation. A young lady, 19 that had a crush on me and would follow me home, and an older man, red and black plaid shirt. I know this because I saw him once and tried to serve him a beer. I will just throw a couple short explanations here. Bar is closed, doors are locked, building is empty, music is shut off, TV's turned off. I am taking the trash out and had to walk about 100 feet down a hallway where for 90 feet of the walk, I could not see the seating area of the bar. Prop open the door, toss the trash in the garbage, shut the door, was never more than 2 feet from this door. As I walk back towards the bar, I hear loud noises, like partying, glasses, bottles clanking, music, just typical busy bar noises. I start walking slower, completely freaked out. I slowly creep towards the part of the hallway where I can see the seating area. Sounds get louder. I peek through the blackened plexiglass wall behind my liquor shelves. I see nothing, but the sounds are louder. I round the corner and can see 80% of the seating area, see nothing and sound stops instantly. I walk past the glassware and round a corner to see the whole seating area. Nothing. Then I hear a sound. Ting, bouncing wine glass fell about 6 feet, bounced off counter, bounced across the floor about 9 feet, made a 90 deg right-hand turn, bounced another 2 feet and sat upright. Then I heard a ting sound as if someone flicked the glass. I called the police and had them sit with me until I finished closing up for the night. I have other stories as well, but fear if I add them this post will be written off as too long. When I was 8.5-ish, my friend and I liked to go push biking a lot. We lived in a small country town, so we're pretty much given free rein to just disappear for the day. It was a weekend, and as we were riding up the crest of a small hill that overlooked a valley in the town, I started to get this deeply uneasy feeling. We stopped at the top. From where we were, we looked out over the valley and directly at the next hill, because Australia really just has bumps, which is where our primary school was. The bottom of that hill was the bottom of the school, and it was the road where all the parents picked up their kids. As I'm looking out over the valley, enjoying the sunshine and the breeze, movement catches my eye. I look back at the school, and I freeze in terror as I watch one car go careening into a car pulled up on the side. I see the two cars smash and crumple up. I can hear the crackle of breaking glass, the rattling thump of the impact, and I know with a bone-deep, terrifying certainty that my other close friend, her sister and mum are in there. And that they're dead, and my friend is going to be left all alone. This was an unshaking fact in my mind as I stared at the accident. I didn't question how I could so clearly hear the screams of the onlookers, the screech of tearing metal, or the ozone stink of hot metal. Even though I was too far away to even be able to hear anything somehow, I was getting sensory overload, like I was right there. My best friend asked me what was wrong. I'm shaking and crying at this point, so I manage stutter and somehow to get across what I've seen. She's puzzled, so my attention focuses back to her as she explains that there is nothing wrong. What am I freaking out about? So I look back, still horrified, and there's nothing there. Everything is still, quiet and calm. A week later, in exactly the same spot, my friend was in a devastating accident. Her mum was picking her and her older sister up from school when someone lost control of their car and smashed into them. The mother and sister died on impact, and my friend was hospitalized for months afterwards. I felt horrifically guilty for years afterwards. I should have told someone, anyone, what I saw, but it was so strange and unnerving that I just tried to forget about it instead. I could have sworn I saw a black robes figure in the corner of my eye standing by my dying cancer grandmother's bed in hospice care. Shocked, I just stared at it, and I noticed my grandmother was looking at it too. She only stopped staring at it when she saw me looking at it. She died that night. Another time was when I was in a potentially deadly motorcycle crash. Was launched over railing and fell at least 15 feet below after I already broke my ribs from the impact. Fell into a very almost man-sized large bush, saved my life. But as I was falling, I could have sworn I saw a transparent man in a 40s style suit with patches on the elbows watching in the woods. No one was really there. It was my dead grandfather's birthday, which fought in WW2 and died in the 70s before I was born due to cancer. But I didn't know that until my dad mentioned it would have been his birthday. Also, this one time where the TV channel changed 116 channels away from what it was on. The only remote was on the TV in front of everyone while we were chatting. It was competitive swimming. Me and my brother both were competitive swimmers. So my friend and I were crossing the street going south, and we passed this homeless lady. 5 minutes later, we had already made our second cross blue going east, and we legit passed up the same lady. I know I wasn't crazy because my friend was tripping about it too. That lady was walking north on the sidewalk when we first patted her. How could she possibly pass us as we were heading east? That means she would have had to somehow get through a gated property that was on the northeast corner and run across the street in front of our eyes and then pass us. Bit that just isn't possible. In my teen years, I moved into a kind of half-assed bedroom in the basement of my mom's house. I think saying it was a creepy basement is a little redundant, but just to be clear, this was and is a creepy basement. A couple rooms were finished, with tile flooring, a fireplace, paneled walls and a half bath. The rest was unfinished, with sinks and oil tanks and HVAC and pipes and a surprising amount of storage, just mostly empty rooms holding junk. I spent some years in my bedroom in the basement with no real problems, but one night, I got a scare. I had stayed up late studying for a biology final. I turned in, I no longer remember, but sometime after 1 a.m. Things seemed pretty routine. I fell asleep. I maybe should mention I was sleeping in a full or queen-sized bed that had formerly belonged to my mom's parents, both of whom were deceased by the time of my story. An hour or so later I came awake, my hands clutching the tops of the blankets and sheets, trying to tug them but finding unexpected resistance. I was just kind of half awake at first, confused, then awake enough to register. I'm attempting to pull the sheet, blankets as I turn over in bed, as I've done many times before, and they're not pulling. Like maybe they are caught on the bed springs somehow. I pulled harder. No good. Pulled again. Then suddenly the blankets and sheets were jerked the other direction strongly, pulled right out of my hands. I remember kind of stammering, trying to say something in response, but I couldn't form words. I immediately turned on the light beside the bed and sat up and looked to the left, in the direction the bedding had been pulled. There was nothing and no one there. I pulled on the blankets again and they moved fine, no resistance, no problems. Everything normal. It took me a while, but I got up and looked over at the other side of the bed. There was nothing to explain what I had just experienced. I turned on more lights and put on a record and stayed up the rest of the night. I eventually looked under the bed and there was nothing there. I continued to stay in that room for another year or so. Nothing like this happened to me again, though I slept with the light on for a while after, with one exception that seems noteworthy. Within a week or so of the bedsheets incident, one night the door to my bedroom opened, apparently by itself. This happened earlier in the evening, before I had turned in and when others in the house were still up and around. My memory is I said out loud something like, "Go away, you're not welcome here, this is my room." Fortunately there was no reply. But, no further troubles, either. I know the obvious explanation as I was asleep and talked myself into something unnatural having happened. It's possible. But when it happened I was quite sure I was awake, after the first moments, and experiencing something abnormal. If anything I'd say I subsequently talked myself into I probably just dreamed that. This is too long, I know, but I will also add. I had a few other spooky events in this house, nothing dramatic, prior to this, and my mom claimed at least one as well. My mom still lives there but no one has used the improvised bedroom in the basement for several years now. Back when this happened I told a friend who reminded me I was sleeping underground at approximately the same level as a corpse is buried. I posted about this elsewhere once, but seems fitting now. A few years ago, I ran into someone from high school at a pub in my hometown. I was never really close with Ryan in school and I don't think we ever talked. But this night we actually spent a lot of time chatting, sharing cigs and having fun with a couple mutual friends. He was so friendly and we shared a lot of interests, so it felt kind of incredible that we'd never hung out before. Our city isn't that big. After the group of us concluded the evening with a terrible rendition of Bohemian Rhapsody at around 2 a.m., I went to leave and walked to my boyfriend's house nearby. When I mentioned that I was walking alone, he insisted that he and a couple of his friends walk me. It was a short distance and I didn't want to impose, but they were going the same direction. I said sure, and off we went. As we finally reached my boyfriend's street, I turned to head towards his house and Ryan gave me a pack of cigarettes with 3 inside. I'd been mooching them from him all night. I only ever smoked on the weekends, when I was drinking. About a month later, I woke up for work on a Wednesday and was craving a cigarette. This was really unlike me. I leisurely enjoyed the last of the 3 cigarettes from the package Ryan had given me and headed to work. During my lunch break, I was on my Facebook and saw many "Rip Ryan" messages posted by mutual friends. I thought it was a hoax because he was known as quite a jokester. Turns out he had committed suicide the night before. Why that day of all days to wake up craving a cigarette? I've always been interested in the symbolism, different interpretations of the meaning of the number 3, so to finish the 3rd and final cigarette that day, hours after his death, felt odd in retrospect. My old house was definitely haunted. My normal quiet dog would growl in empty dark rooms and I'd seen Shadow quickly move across the hallway. The worst moment though was when I was about 9 and could fall asleep. I was randomly looking round my room when I saw some sort of creature crouched in the corner, with a dark body but bright red face. Now being a wimpy little kid, I immediately wrapped myself up in my bed covers and forced myself asleep. Never saw the thing again but still kinda creeps me out to this day. When I was 15 years old, my high school choir class took a trip to Italy, ostensibly to sing for the Pope. While that part, the Pope singing, never actually happened, we did participate in a mass ensemble performance of the Verdi Requiem, and we had about 2 weeks to explore Rome, Venice, and Florence. Now, folks who have been to Italy are probably rolling their eyes already, because a travel circuit including those cities is only slightly less telling than someone screaming, "I am a tourist," at the top of their lungs. As is wont to happen with such people, tourists, I took the opportunity to avail myself of the local junk dealers, eventually purchasing a knockoff Zippo lighter with a Harley-Davidson logo on the front. I bought other souvenirs while I was there, but that lighter was one of the few that actually made it home with me. It was also the item that I thought I'd lost, only to have it turn up in the most bizarre way. One evening, close to 10 years later, I was driving up the highway from San Francisco to Sacramento, intent on visiting a young woman for whom I had no shortage of affection. Although the evening would eventually take a turn for the bizarre, and in more ways than one, nothing seemed amiss until I happened to accelerate over a small hill and have my engine promptly decide to stop working afterward. The short version of what happened is that my timing belt broke. My car was kaput, and my stepfather had to come and pick me up from the side of the road while the metal hulk was hauled away. Then, the following morning, my mother had to visit the lot to where it was towed. Given that I didn't exactly have a means of getting there anymore, and amongst the personal items that she retrieved, was my counterfeit lighter. So what? You may be asking. You probably dropped it while you were driving or something. You're lucky you didn't set your car on fire. That would certainly be a reasonable explanation. Except for the fact that I'd lost my lighter, or thought that I had, several years prior to purchasing that car. There was literally no way that I could have been carrying the fire starter and my keys at the same time, and certainly no way of having dropped it while driving. My operating theory is that my mother had previously confiscated the lighter without my knowledge, and decided that my vehicular loss was the best opportunity that she'd get to return it. TLDR. My long-lost lighter reappeared after my car committed suicide. This had to have been about 2 years ago during the summer. I had this dream that I was in this old-timey train station and I was standing next to this man wearing a brown trench coat and one of those fedoras reporters used to wear. The man then turned to me and said, "I'm going to pick up your Uncle Bud. Don't worry about him, he's going to be just fine." As the man turned away, the train pulled up and the man walked on. I woke up from the dream as soon as the train pulled out of the station. When I woke up it was about 1 in the morning. The next morning I get the news that my great-uncle Bud died in the night around 1 a.m. I immediately told my parents about the dream. After describing the man in the station, my dad shockingly exclaimed that he knew for a fact that the man in my dream was his dad who had passed years before I was born. According to my father, his dad wore the same brown trench coat and hat, and it made sense that his dad picked up Uncle Bud because they used to be really good friends. I remember at that time being really shaky on my beliefs of the paranormal, and sometimes I still am, but I truly cannot explain that. I had pneumonia when my grandfather died. Of pneumonia, actually. I sleepwalk. I think I was sleepwalking this because I don't remember it. I woke up, walked into my mom's room, shook her awake and told her that Papa loved her and wanted her to know he would always watch over her. She was ushering me back to bed when the phone rang. That phone call was my grandmother telling my mom that Papa had passed. I'll just copy and paste from a post I made a little while ago. My family tells this story all the time. My story is placed in Mexico and happened to my grandmother. Sorry for the wall of text I am on my tablet and it sucks. I met my paternal grandmother twice because she lived in Mexico, but I heard this from my dad and then confirmed by her when we visited. Well, the story goes that my grandfather was supposed to come home early, 8 p.m. To help her empty a heavy water basin she needed to wash clothes in, by hand, at night, so when she hangs the clothes sun won't fade colors. Well, Grandpa goes to the bar down the street instead and Grandma was left to do the heavy lifting alone. She is pissed at this point and began cussing up a storm directed at my grandfather, still not home by 2 a.m. She said she was cursing aloud because that's how angry she was. Well, their house is located on the corner of their property, maybe 3 city blocks of fields. So she is cursing my grandpa out when she sees a man approaching in the distance who she assumes is my granddad, but as he gets closer she said he somehow started morphing between a huge black dog and a man. 1 second there is a dog and 1 second there is a man. And is starting to get close fast, so she runs inside and latches the doors with the metal bar. There is no knobs or keyholes, just a thick metal that blocks the door from opening, and the windows are these metal little doors that have the bar that goes in a hole in the wall. Well, she literally sees the metal slide out of the hole and the window swings open, and on the other side there is a handsome man asking if she needed help, with the ugliest, prettiest smile. Well, my grandma wasn't about to fall for it and instantly replies, "Go back to hell, Satan," and slams the window. She begins praying until she hears banging on the door, which is now my grandpa trying to get in the house. She immediately lets him in and tells him what happened, which he thinks is pretty funny considering she was cussing him out. However, his tune changed the next day when outside the window where the man was standing there is a mess of huge paw prints in the soft dirt. And against the wall on the sides the window high up on the wall. They got a white magic witch to check out their house and she was like, "Fuck that, y'all need a priest for this," so they got a priest who blessed their house and whatnot. I always heard this story in Spanish, which I think makes it way scarier, but there you go people. I have 3 stories, and I will tell them in the order that they occurred. They're all unrelated, other than that they all happened to me. 1. When I was in grade 6, in the year 2000 or so, I went on my first overnight trip with my school. It was a retreat out in the woods. One of the activities was a scavenger hunt. It was a snowy day and my group accidentally stumbled upon a graveyard. I discovered it was a graveyard when I tripped over a stone. The snow I loosened revealed the person whose stone it was had died on the exact same day I was born. 2. When I was 19 or so, I was dating this guy. Since we both lived with our parents, we would drive out to abandoned lots to make out. One time we pulled into an old abandoned shopping plaza. A couple minutes in, I get a very uneasy feeling. I kept thinking about a man whose hair was on fire who wanted us to leave. The boyfriend noticed I looked scared. Then he says, without any prompting from me, I have this weird feeling like someone is watching us and he's on fire. We booked it out of there. Drove by again a few days later during the day. There were distinct burn marks on the building we hadn't noticed before. 3. A few years after that, I was on a long road trip from Florida to Toronto with a friend. We didn't have any plans, just stopped at random campsites and motels along the way. Now this is relevant because the point I'm trying to make is that there was no way I had any foreknowledge of the following. I'm used to camping and I'm not scared of ghosts, etc. Despite the weird stuff that's already happened above, there was a particular campsite that felt off to me. I couldn't explain why. It wasn't particularly old or lacking in resources. When the sun went down, I really started to feel uncomfortable. I had all these bad dreams about being tied up and beaten. And I kept seeing rotting thigh bones that were buried under stones, and a trailer was placed on top of me. My sleeping partner confirmed that I had tossed and turned and screamed in my sleep all night. I woke up the next morning and went to the bathroom. Along the way I saw the trailer from my dreams, and when I did, a woman's name appeared in my head. I took my phone out to Google it, but I had no reception. We packed up and left. A few hours later, once we had reception on the road, the page reloaded. The name had turned up as person who went missing in the area about 20 years ago. At the time I was too scared to do anything about it. I don't know what I could have said. I really still shudder thinking about. Was camping deep in the woods near a Buddhist monastery in Bloomington, Indiana with 2 friends of mine. While we were in the woods, we found a spot on top of a hill with no trees, perfect for a campfire, stargazing. As we're looking at the stars, we notice a bright spot zagging along as if it were pointed by a shaky-handed laser pointer. Suddenly it raced east, then back west, then south over us and back north until we didn't see it anymore. Suddenly it was right near us, burst into 4 lights with one remaining the main one while the others darted into different directions. My friend was starting to freak out, so we booked it back, keeping a bright tri-light to our northwest as a guide back. It looked like the top of a radio tower. It was pitch black under the canopy. The speeds at which those lights came and went were greater than any live jets or airplanes I've seen personally or online. My friend recorded most of it, with having a shitty phone camera back then still showing the light clearly zooming across the sky. When he went back a couple of days later with his dad, he didn't see any lights, nor our guiding beacon home. That would be the bridge. I was driving home late one night. Somewhere between 1 and 3 a.m. The stretch of road I was driving goes through the back end of a couple of counties in the deep south. Nothing around but forests, fields, and the occasional group of shacks huddling under a light that only barely keeps away the night. I'd driven this stretch of road many times before, even at this time of night, so it wasn't really a big deal. Just a long trip. Since there was rarely any traffic that time of night, during the day you could always count on at least a handful of cars somewhere around. I was able to turn the stereo up and push the pedal down. And then I came to this bridge. Nothing really noteworthy about it. It's not ancient or a covered bridge or all that spooky. Just a concrete span over swampland, trees growing right up near the edge and turning the road into a dim trail at the bottom of a dark canyon. I'd been over this bridge many times before, and aside from being fairly long, it wasn't really noteworthy. Until that night. It was humid out, and as the temperature dropped there was a little bit of fog. Not enough to really slow me down, but I had to turn off the high beams. So I'm shooting across the bridge and it hits me that it seems to be taking longer than normal to get across it. Maybe I was just tired? Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me, and then I thought I was finally getting to the end of it. I saw a figure walking on the opposite side of the road. At first, no big deal, right? Guy walking in the middle of nowhere in the middle of the night. Probably lives nearby, probably drunk. Watch them to make sure they don't fall in front of the car. But my mind is already racing. I mean, this is the middle of nowhere. There are no houses around. There are no lights but the stars and my headlights stabbing out at the darkness. And as I whiz by going way too fast for my own good, I noticed two things. First, the figure is wearing what appears to be a straight jacket, the sleeves undone, and the straps trailing to the ground. Glaring white against the background of the night. No mistaking it. A straight jacket, hands covered, straps dangling and waving as he walked. Second, it has no face. Not like, there's no head there. There's a head shape, and the place where a face should be, but no face. Just an expanse of darkness that I took to be his skin. I chalked it up to going really fast, contrast between white jacket and dark skin at night, and thinking creepy thoughts. I mean, surely I couldn't have just seen that. I tried to spot him in my rear view mirror, but it was so dark there was nothing to be seen. I slowed down a little, and was suddenly off the end of the bridge and on normal 2-lane blacktop again. I briefly considered turning around, seeing what it was. Surely it was just a trick of the light or my mind playing tricks on me. Right? But I still remember being my heart pounding in fear as I sped on through the darkness, driving home. One time I was coming back from a fly fishing trip up into the Smokies with my friend Caesar. We stopped at a Mexican restaurant for lunch. While we were waiting for the chips to arrive, both of us looked at each other and simultaneously, without prompting, sang the exact same stupid song, Mex con restaurant. Neither of us had ever sung it before, or sung anything out loud before. Neither of us sang. We both kind of furrowed our brows at each other in surprise and have never spoken about it again. It was weird, and completely stupid, but I have never forgotten it.